Three things happened this week. A guy built an impenetrable biometric vault, palm scans, zero knowledge proofs, $36 million went into it. It was secured by a single private key on a developer laptop. He lost it. Tim Cook told 450 million Europeans they can't have the new Siri, not because the technology doesn't work, because Apple and the EU are fighting over who controls the AI on your phone. And neither side asked you. And 14 US states are blocking data centers. This is not NIMBYism. The grid physically cannot handle AI compute and civilian power at the same time. The cloud has a body, and it's made of concrete and megawatts, and it's competing with your air conditioning. Same mechanism, 3 different doors. 3 doors, 1 body, and it's yours. They sell you sovereignty, then secure it with a single key. They sell you safety, then gate the feature behind a regulatory fight you had no vote in. They sell you the cloud, then your lights flicker. Humanity Protocol. It launched to protect you in the AI era. Here's their pitch. You scan your palm, the protocol generates a zero knowledge proof. It verifies you're human without storing your biometrics. It's trustless, decentralized, and impenetrable. Proof of humanity. In June 2026, it was the largest crypto exploit of the month. $36 million drained. You're asking how? A compromised private key. One single key on a laptop. The security firm Halborn did a postmortem. Malware infected a single developer's laptop. Sitting on that laptop is what the founder later called an accidental backup. That accidental backup was 7 private keys, 1 hot wallet key for full control, and 2 sets of 3 multi-sig keys for bridge contracts. The attackers drained 447 million tokens and minted 300 million more. Token value collapsed 80 to 90% in 12 hours, completely gone, irreversible. The founder, Terrence Kwok, publicly said, the breach resulted from a compromised private key. And the way he said it, these things happen. Gosh, that was his explanation. And it wasn't the one he thinks it is. Because what he's actually saying is, the protocol that required you to scan your palm, that called itself trustless, decentralized, impenetrable, was secured by a single point of human failure. A developer's laptop, 7 keys in one place. No hardware security module, no air gap, and they've been sitting there on that laptop for a year. You had to prove you were human, and they didn't. Blockchain investigator Zach XBT questioned the explanation publicly, suggested possible inside job. I'm not going to speculate, but if your entire pitch is, we're protecting humanity from AI impersonation, and your production deployment is 7 keys on 1 developer's machine for 12 months, that's not an accident, that's architecture. The decentralization was theater. The theater was the product. The most expensive laptop in crypto history, that's what this is. Someone left the keys on their laptop. If that story is about what happens when one person holds the key and loses it, the next one is about what happens when 2 massive institutions fight over who holds the keys and you're not in the room. 2026, June 8th, WWDC. We covered this already, but here's an update. Apple announces Siri AI fully redesigned, Apple Intelligence powered, personal context, cross-app actions, on-screen awareness. The Siri they've been promising since 2011. On the same day, in the same presentation, Apple announces Siri AI will not launch in the European Union. iOS 27, iPadOS 27, watchOS 27. 450 million people are locked out. Apple publishes a newsroom statement. The Digital Markets Act forced their hand. EU regulators rejected all of Apple's proposals. Craig Federighi is deeply disappointed. The next day, EU Commission spokesperson Thomas Rainier fires back publicly. On the same day, the decision not to roll out Siri AI in the EU is Apple's and Apple's only. There's absolutely nothing in the DMA that prohibits Apple from introducing new products in the EU. Apple says the EU is forcing them to compromise privacy. The EU says Apple is using privacy as an excuse to avoid competition. Both say they're protecting you. Neither one asked you. Here's what they're actually fighting about. And this is the thing that most coverage doesn't cover. Apple proposed something called the trusted system. Third-party AI assistants, Google, Samsung, whoever, want access to the same features Siri AI gets. Messages, photos, payments. Apple said fine, but you have to go through us. The trusted system agent is the gate. Apple controls what passes through. The EU said no. Apple's version, the DMA forces us to give rivals nearly unlimited access to a user's device, without ongoing visibility and control. The EU's version, Apple was unable to develop interoperability solutions that meet essential privacy standards. Translation, Apple wants to be the gatekeeper. The EU doesn't trust Apple to be the gatekeeper. Neither side has a solution that doesn't involve a gatekeeper. And here's the detail that tells you everything. Siri AI works on Macs in the EU, just not on iPhones, not iPads, not watches. The line Apple drew is very revealing. The mobile Surface, the device in your pocket with your messages and photos and payments and location, that's the battlefield. Because that's where an AI agent can actually act on your behalf. The Mac is a computer. The iPhone is a control surface. Control surfaces are worth fighting over. June 30th, Tim Cook meets with the EU. Tech chief Henna Verkunen. The EU describes it as a constructive exchange on topics of common interest, on which the work continues. Translation, nothing broke, nothing was decided. 450 million people still waiting. 2 institutions, 1 corporation, 1 government. Both claim they're protecting you. Neither gave you a vote. And the architecture is indifferent to who wins. If Apple wins, the trusted system agent becomes a permanent toll booth. If the EU wins, interoperability is mandatory, but only compliance-grade corporations with legal armies can meet the standard. Either way, the gate stays. The gatekeeper changes. You gotta wait for permission. So we've got one guy who lost the key, 2 institutions fighting over who holds the key. Both of those are about digital control. Who accesses what data? Who runs what software? But all of that runs on something physical. And this week, that physical thing started breaking. 14 US states have introduced active moratoriums on data center construction. 14 in 2026 alone. Georgia, New York, Maryland, Virginia, South Dakota, Oklahoma, and more. This is being covered as local news. NIMBY complaints. Neighbors don't like the noise. Standard stuff. It's not standard. Because underneath the zoning fights are the numbers and the physics. What you're seeing is something else. This is not about noise. This is about survival. 222 moratorium instruments across 30 states. 300 plus data center bills filed in early 2026 alone. The scale should tell you this isn't about one neighborhood complaining about truck traffic. June 26, MIT researchers published a grid simulation. Global data center power consumption surged 26% this year to 565 terawatt hours. AI optimized servers consumed 31% of that, about 175 terawatt hours. That's just for AI. The simulation models what happens when a data center cluster draws a peak while the civilian grid is under summer load. The answer? Brownouts. Brownout cascades. Within 90 seconds, a mid-sized data center uses 3 to 5 million gallons of water a day for cooling. That's your water, the same aquifer your town drinks from. The fix? MIT proposes data centers must become flexible load. They must voluntarily throttle during peak civilian demand. They step back so your air conditioner doesn't shut off. AI compute and civilian electricity are now competing for the same electrons. Someone has to decide who gets them. In the same month, the US Department of Energy issues a formal RFI on sitting AI infrastructure directly on DOE-owned lands. Public land. Your land. This bypasses state and local zoning authority entirely. The same week states are passing moratoriums to block data centers, the federal government is asking how to override those moratoriums by putting data centers on federal land. Here's the bottom up. Communities are blocking them because they can see what's happening to their grid. Top down, the federal government is trying to bypass local resistance. And the physics, the actual electrons, the grid can't handle both. They sold you the cloud, weightless, infinite, anywhere. Then 24 states had to block data centers from entering their power grid. Then MIT showed the grid collapses in 90 seconds. Then the DOE offered up public lands to build more. The cloud was never weightless. It was just someone else's problem until it showed up in your state, on your grid, competing with your air conditioning. The cloud, that was metaphor. But the bill, that's physical. 3 stories, 1 mechanism. They sell you sovereignty, palm scan, zero knowledge proofs, proof of humanity, trustless architecture, secured by a single key on a laptop. The key gets compromised. $36 million gone. They call it an accident. They sell you safety, the most private phone, the most secure assistant, the most careful company. Then they lock 450 million people out. Not because the technology doesn't work, but because 2 institutions are fighting over who controls the gate. Neither one asks you. They sell you the cloud, limitless, invisible, effortless. Then the grid starts failing. 14 states say no. MIT says 90 seconds to brownout. The DOE offers your land to companies whose infrastructure is breaking your grid. Sovereignty, safety, the cloud. The jig is up. I'll see you next week.